Moving on, the Office of Health and Wellness traditionally begins all meetings with a welcoming ritual, which you will note in the next slide. Welcoming rituals are inclusive, respectful, and engaging. They provide opportunities for the community to come together and learn from one another. At times, you may find some people may choose not to engage, and that's okay. So could we kindly advance to the next slide, which is entitled Habits for Good Health. Today's welcoming ritual is called Habits for Good Health. This opening ritual is taken from the lesson that you'll be sharing with your students. Here's how it works. Simply choose one of the habits for good health that you practiced this week or thought about practicing this week and type it into the chat. I invite you to participate and share your responses. So take a look at the Bitmojis and please enter the chat that you or thought about practicing this week. And as you do, I just want to remind you that we'll be using the chat today for this and for other activities. You're also welcome to put questions into the chat, and we'll try our best to find timely answers. If we're not able to answer a question, you are welcome to stay on with us at the end of this meeting, and we'll have time to answer those at that point. Okay, I can see a lot of wonderful things coming into our chat. Keep adding those in. Feel free to throw in a second one if you had an exceptionally good week. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for participating in one of the 3 cell signature practices. The 3 cell signature practices provide explicit opportunities to embed and practice social emotional learning competencies and skills. We look forward to hearing how this welcoming ritual, called Habits for Good Health, worked in your classroom. Let's move on to the agenda. As you can see, our agenda is structured into 3 parts. Could we please forward to the next slide? Thank you. Part 1, setting the stage. Part 2, considering our community. And Part 3, reviewing the resources. Our meeting is framed by a welcoming ritual, which we just all did, and an optimistic close. Together, those are 2 of the 3 cell signature practices, which you can hear more about in other professional developments offered this week. The third, engaging activities, will be embedded throughout our time together. Let's introduce the health education team. The health education team is excited to partner with you to bring these resources to your students. Our team provides remote coaching support to staff who teach health education. At the end of the presentation, we'll provide you with a link to reach out to us. We look forward to supporting the health and wellness of your students. Remember, healthy students are students who are ready to learn. I'd like to note that we are missing a key member of the team that helped us create all of the resources, and that is Maggie Carmona. You'll see the virtual classrooms that she created and some other materials as our time together progresses. So let's jump right into part 1. Part 1 is setting the stage. On this Boston Public Schools slide, returning strong, you'll see that the overarching objectives help to focus our work on practices that are culturally and linguistically sustaining, anti-racist, and advance racial equity. These objectives have guided the creation of all materials presented and shared here today. To continue, we would like to offer these agreements for your consideration. We invite you to be fully present, to assume best intentions, to share the mic, and to focus on the positive and what you can take away from this session. Please take a moment to review the shared agreements. So could we please forward the slide to shared agreements? And after you've read those shared agreements, you can show us your participation by using the thumbs up in the Zoom chat. Next, let's move on to our session objectives and why we're here together today. There are 3 session objectives. At the end of our time together today, you'll be able to explain BPS's health services reopening guidance in a student-friendly manner across grade bands. You'll be able to access age and appropriate lessons on BPS's health and safety protocols for COVID-19 in the Health Education Remote Learning Library. You'll be able to explore lesson resources to educate and reinforce specific health behaviors like mask wearing and physical distancing that will help prevent the spread of COVID in your classroom and in your school community in a way that promotes culturally and linguistically affirming practices. So our purpose today is to provide you with materials and resources so you can be in front of your students in your classroom, be it hybrid or remote, to teach these protocols in a student-friendly way. You may have questions about the specifics of the health reopening guidance. Please note that you'll receive more detailed information from your nurses during that specific professional development. All right, so let's move on and continue to set the stage and talk a bit about what is health education. Health education is an academic discipline with national and state standards, as well as BPS student learning outcomes and a scaffolded scope and sequence that outlines evidence-based curriculum from pre-K to grade 12. Boston's comprehensive health education program is summarized in the document entitled Meet Our BPS Health Teachers, which is included in the resource slide. The National Health Education Standards, which you can read in the center column on this slide, were first published in 1995. You'll notice that they have always been inclusive of social and emotional learning skills and competencies. And as you compare the Boston's transformative social emotional learning competencies, you can very much see the interconnectedness. The first circle shows Boston's wellness policy. Health education is one of the key components of that policy and is represented by the purple icon in the bottom right-hand corner. So let's pull out that purple icon and talk a bit more about health education. Health education has always been paramount. We're reminded in times like these of its essentiality. Next slide, please. Health education builds essential skills and has real and lasting positive effects on student, family, and community health, now and for generations to come. Health education provides continuous learning opportunities for students to practice skills that reinforce healthy behaviors and support health-enhancing choices across their lifespan. It addresses every aspect of what's going on during the dual pandemics, and it focuses on the interconnectedness of social, emotional, and physical health. Health education builds home-school connections by engaging families in health topics, and it coaches students on advocacy platforms to be the agents of change. Good health is a national goal that, when achieved, will help the nation and its communities heal and move forward. Healthy students are students who are able to learn. Please take a moment to reflect on your own health and the impact it has on your daily life. Let's look at the health services reopening guidance. The next 2 slides reference the health services reopening guidance, and it is the document upon which this presentation and all student-facing lessons were crafted. The reopening guidance includes health and safety protocols for 3 critical times in a student and staff day. Before students and staff enter the building. Number 2, while students and staff are in the building. And number 3, how to return to school after showing symptoms of COVID-19. Just as a friendly reminder, For folks who are just joining us, our purpose today is to provide you with materials and resources so you can be in front of your students to teach these protocols in a student-friendly manner. You will receive more detailed information about the specifics in that document from your school nurse. Now I'm going to pass the microphone over to Felicia, our ETTH grant coordinator, so we can all participate in a poll. Felicia?
I think you're muted, Felicia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to quickly participate in a test your knowledge, quick fun facts to test your knowledge on some of the reopening guidance. It's okay if you haven't read them yet. I'm sure you'll be able to choose the best response. So I'm going to launch a poll right now. So our first polling question is true or false? BPS students and employees are required to complete a home screening checklist prior to reporting to work or school. And I'll give everyone 8 seconds to complete. All right, I'll be ending the poll now. Great job, everyone. It looks like we're all pretty much on the same consensus. That is true. Everyone will be required to essentially check their symptoms prior to coming to work or school, and then notifying their schools if anything seems a little bit of something that could cause concern. So let's move to the next poll. The next question is the following. I can return to school after experiencing COVID-19 symptoms, after I've remained home for at least 10 days, after I have no fever for 24 hours with medicine, after all of my symptoms have improved or cleared up, or all of the above. Perfect. So let's end this poll here and see the results. Nicely done once again, everyone. See, I told you it'd be easier than you thought. So the answer is all of the above. So you'll be required to make sure you've stayed home at least for 10 days, have no fever without medicine, and also that all your symptoms have improved. All right, so let's head over to the next question. We're halfway there. So the next question is the following. When should I wipe down my workspace? Should I just wipe it at the beginning of the day? Should I do it at the beginning and end of every rotation? Should I wipe down my desk at the end of the day? Or all of the above? All right, let's end the poll. Seems like everyone's getting a hang of this, and the answer is D. Correct, you should probably make it a habit to wipe down your desk, all the time. And as just for a note, our schools will be supplying cleaning supplies and materials to make sure that everyone is able to clear the desk throughout the day. And last but not least, our last question is the following. Will our school leaders inform us that someone has tested positive for COVID? Yes, of course, for our safety. Only if we are in close contact, yes, but the information will not include their name, as that's protected medical information, or no one's going to tell us anything. All right, I'll be ending this poll question now, and let's look at our results. Awesome, once again, you all knocked it out of the park, and I'm happy to report that the answer is C. Yes, but the information will not be included, including their names, as that is protected medical information. Well, thank you all for participating in this quick poll, and I'll pass it back to Cheryl.
Thanks, Felicia. That was a lot of fun. So as we continue to set the stage, let's take a peek at some definitions. What is COVID-19? Coronavirus refers to a family of viruses that cause many different types of diseases, including the common cold and the flu. SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, is also a coronavirus. Fun fact, coronavirus is a name for the crown-like spikes on their surfaces. They were first documented in the mid-1960s. Take a peek at this slide. Can you count the number of crown-like tips on the viruses included? Don't forget the one under the microscope. COVID-19 is a novel or new coronavirus. And the name is a mashup of letters and one number, which you can see in this slide. Slides on key vocabulary words like COVID-19 are included in the student-facing PowerPoint to help build health literacy. On to part 2, considering our community, and I'll pass it back to Felicia. Take it away. You're muted.
Thanks again, everyone. I'll get better at that. Awesome. So, COVID-19 has revealed nationally the deep-seated health inequities and disparities for many of our communities. Systematic inequalities and inequities in areas of life that impact our health, commonly known as social determinants of health, including housing, education, access to healthcare, disproportionately affect racial and ethnic minority groups, leading to an increased risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19. So, what's the connection between health education and health equity? Well, let's start with defining health equity. Health equity is when everyone has the opportunity to be as healthy as possible. This would therefore not only include having access to these opportunities, but also understanding why they are important and how to utilize these resources. That's where health education comes in. The current pandemic has drastically highlighted the need for comprehensive health education, especially for our students of color, due to high levels of misinformation and higher risk of comorbidities within our communities. It is clear that we must provide all our students with the opportunities to build health literacy skills and to make informed decisions about their health and the communities that they live in. Health education is included in the BPS 2020 through 2025 strategic plan as a core element needed to create a high-quality school. This is the perfect time to meet that challenge and bring health education to our classroom. Now back to you, Cheryl.
Thanks, Felicia. So let's talk about returning to school. The return to school this year will be unlike any in our educational history. It will be emotionally charged as evidenced by COVID-19, our socio-political climate, visible killings, people of color, and the unwavering voice of anti-racist protests across our nation. In her writings, Dr. Bettina Love reminds us that conversations that unpack and challenge ideas about race, class, privilege, religion, sexuality and sexism, and power are critical to the everyday lives of students of color. Next slide, please. Health education learning materials focus on the strengths and assets of our students, our families, and our school communities. Our materials are trauma-informed and strength-based. They are also designed to help students learn and practice the skills needed to be self-determined, independent learners who are able to pursue their aspirations and thus address BPS's problem of practice. To complete part 2 of the training, I invite you to take a look at a movement activity through a trauma-informed lens. You'll have voice and choice in this activity. So the first choice you'll need to make, and again, providing voice and choice is really important in a trauma-informed practice. Please think about your movement choice. You have a few options. Number 1, when the music begins, in a moment, but not quite yet, you're welcome to dance and mime along to the music. Dance and mime washing your hands. A second option would be to run in place while washing your hands. Third option would be to listen and just tap out that beat. Number 4, you can stay seated and do arm stretches. And number 5, perhaps you have a choice of your own, which you are most comfortable with. And we invite that into this activity as well. Next choice will be your choice of music. We've made that selection here for today just so that we don't have over 100 speakers chiming in. But just when you do run this with your students, you can click on the first picture to hear the song in Spanish. You can click on the second picture to hear the same song in English. And you can click on the third option to start the song with the Hip Hop Public Health musical group. Once you have chosen your movement, so think about that again, will you be dancing while miming hand washing, running in place, listening and tapping out the beat, staying seated and doing arm stretches, or bringing in an activity that you are most comfortable with? In a moment, our guest DJ, Maggie Carmona, will begin to play the music. For 1 minute, I'd love you to join in with us and enjoy this musical interlude. It's over to you, Maggie.
Wash your hands, everybody, and everybody. Wash your hands. My people uptown, wash your hands. My people downtown, wash your hands. People from the East Coast, wash your hands. People from the West Coast, wash your hands.
First and foremost, please listen close. Take your time, wash. Use a lot of soap from the front to the back, back to the front. Sing the hook where you at. That's exactly what we want. Get your little fever, shortness of breath, slight little cough. You can feel it in your chest. You should call your doctor. Doctor know what's best. Don't go running to the hospital because you could be a threat. Coronavirus.
Don't you get it?
Don't you get it?
Can't you see?
Can't you see?
We are living in a state of emergency. Epidemic, pandemic, social distance, non-existence. Don't resist this. Get gone in an instant if you miss this.
Thank you, DJ Maggie, and welcome back. I hope you feel energized and ready for more learning. Remember, a brain break always helps to gear up the energy level. This movement break has been again brought to you by DJ Maggie and the health education team, and it is included in your student-facing PowerPoint that you'll share with your class. Also included, but not featured here, our other videos and songs, including If You're Healthy and You Know It, Wash Your Hands, If You're Healthy and You Know It, Wear a Mask, and on it goes. So we'll be sharing those resources with you at the end of our time together. I'd now like to introduce Susie Spressert, our instructional coach from grades pre-K to grade 12, and she will be walking you through the resources, which is part 3 of our time together. Susie?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Cheryl. Part 3 is the final section of our learning together today, and we'll be reviewing the health education resources and highlighting some, but not all, of the student-facing materials. And again, all materials will be available at the end of this presentation. To deliver this information, you will receive a copy of a student-facing PowerPoint, to accompany the lesson materials. And we are recommending that you try to build in time next week, perhaps, to start sharing these lessons. And then perhaps when we get back into a hybrid model, thinking through how you might want to revisit them, as it seems like, and as we know, in terms of building skills and skill building, it takes multiple times to repeat the messages. We also would like to offer, if you are looking for any types of modifications, we do have Pat Santon, who is our health education instructional coach for students with disabilities. And so if you are thinking about any additional modifications for your learners, we're happy to think through those with you as well. So these student-facing PowerPoints are broken up into 3 grade bands: pre-K to grade 2, grades 3 to 6, and then grades 7 to 12. And the movement break you just saw will be featured in that grade 7 to 12 PowerPoint that you will see. We realized perhaps we could have broken these up slightly differently, but time guided our decision. We definitely invite you to look at all 3 slide decks and cull any of the information from one to another if it fits your student learners. Next, let's take a look at what each lesson includes. Each lesson will include essential questions, key vocabulary, engaging activities, virtual classrooms, and then key assessments. All right, thank you. On this next slide, you'll see an example of some of the visual strategies we've used to guide the lesson. So for example, here, if you see a gold star in the corner, that will indicate that there's going to be an exciting activity or some kind of engaging activity for your students. All right, next slide, please. You'll notice that all of the components of each PowerPoint are listed on this slide. And the title is Protecting Self and Others. So what you see here are 6 different ways that we want to introduce how to protect ourselves and others to our students. So some of you might be able to go through the whole PowerPoint in one class time, and some of you might want to break it up a little bit differently and then, like we said, revisit. We're going to review most of the material, but not all of it today. We do have skills built into every single one of these different categories. Next slide, please. As you can see, an essential question guides the learning. So the essential question for us across all of the materials is, how can I be healthy and protect myself and others from spreading germs, including those germs that cause COVID-19? All right. Looking at the essential question, how can I be healthy and protect myself and others, we are reminded of the habits for good health. And so this slide that you see, which you will also see in the PowerPoint, what we tried to do here is to make it really clear and easy for your students to see that we're going to be focusing on the top 4 habits for good health. And in our health education learning library, we have additional lessons for all of the other healthy habits. And so please reach out if that's something that you're going to be able to work into your scope and sequence, which we hope it will be. All right. Let's see. Next, I am so excited to be able to share this resource with you that captures the habits for good health. The next few slides focus on virtual classrooms. Can you please just give me a symbol in the chat if you've seen a virtual classroom and if you've used those with your student learners before? So you can use the thumbs up, or there's a whole set of new reactions here. You could give a smiley face or a heart, or you can write yes in the chat. Okay, so we introduced these virtual classrooms last spring as we realized that it was a great way for students to be able to learn more about the material, and also they could do that either in class time or as self-paced. So a virtual classroom is an online learning tool in which students engage with the content by clicking on different objects throughout the presented classroom. So one thing that we did also learn this spring is that it's helpful to have a set of directions so that students understand and family members can understand what is it that they're supposed to be doing in this virtual classroom. So we've created 3 virtual classrooms focused on BPS's health and safety protocols. You're going to see one for elementary, one for secondary, and then another one for families. We've included all 3 in this presentation so that you can see the progression between the 2 grade bands represented. Either this elementary or the secondary one will be embedded into your student-facing PowerPoint lesson. And we also want to recommend that you share the family one in some capacity as well. So just back to the, you can go back to what is a virtual classroom for a second, please. I just want to go over the steps. So you see the steps here. Step 1 is you're going to find an object on the screen. Step 2, you'll click and select that object, and then it's going to take you to another website where you'll either be able to explore additional information, read an article, watch a video. You're going to learn more about that topic that you've selected. And step 4, you'll return to the virtual classroom and then repeat that as many times as you want. We've also included some exit tickets in the classroom so you can see what your students are exploring and what they are learning. All right, next slide, please. So on your screen now is the elementary virtual classroom for grades pre-K to grade 6. It has age-appropriate materials on COVID-19 and contains links to resources on hand washing, mask wearing, physical distancing, and much more. So do you notice the image of Boston in the windows? Could you please take a moment and write in the chat if you recognize this Boston Park where this photo was taken? I see a few guesses. Oh, there we go. All right, I'm gonna ask Maggie, who created all of these virtual classrooms, to chime in and tell us, where is that Boston Park?
It is Piers Park in East Boston.
Excellent, thank you. So what we try to do is make this as specific to the Boston community as possible. Thanks, Maggie. All right, so that's the elementary classroom. There are a lot of exciting visuals that you can click around on, and we're gonna give you a chance to do that in just 1 second. The next classroom that I wanted to share is a secondary classroom for grades 7 to 12. We realize this is a large grade band to group together, and we've tried to include links that will appeal to all learners. And I just want to point out in this classroom, the Y2 Connect poster, which you can see right under the clock. This poster highlights an incredible student-friendly application where young people can enter in their zip code, and then they can find health services in their area, in their neighborhood, or they can find health services throughout the Boston community. The final classroom, the family classroom, will be featured in both the student-facing PowerPoints to help students continue these important conversations at home. We also were wondering about adding that to places like Clever. Our hope is that the entire BPS community, from East Boston, Hyde Park, from Dorchester to Allston, Brighton, will be able to access these materials. And our goal is to build a consistent understanding of public health and safety. We continue to build activities critical to supporting and building authentic partnerships with our families. So without further ado, let's take some time to explore the classrooms so you get a chance to see what kind of material is already in there. In just a moment, we're going to put 5 minutes on the clock, and you'll have a chance to explore the classroom of your choice. As a reminder, you can access the content by clicking on the different objects throughout the presented classrooms. Objects in the classroom are linked to web pages with additional learning information. So I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes, and Maggie and Megra and Felicia will be sending the virtual classroom link through the chat. So please take a moment to access that and take a look. We put them all together in one document for you right now, just for ease of use. All right, so let's start our 5 minutes on the clock, please. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here in 5 minutes. Don't worry, I'm still keeping track on my clock, but we're just going to take a quick minute to shift a few things around because we understand there's been some technical difficulties. So thanks for your patience as we do that. So we're still taking a few minutes to look around through the virtual classrooms, and I have my own timer set, so we'll get us back on track in just a couple minutes. All right, so about 20 more seconds, and then we'll come back together.
We're just going to switch the screen share, but it's going to take a second.
Okay, well, while we're waiting on that, we would love to hear some of your first impressions of using the virtual classrooms. And I understand we probably need some technical assistance for a few folks. No worries, we'll help you out with that too. And we found that sometimes students will need some assistance as well. I see some folks adding in comments like, these are great, super cool. Thank you so much. And somebody had asked, are we going to have those as Google Slides? And I believe we will, so you can be able to modify. There's also an awesome tutorial on how to make one on your own if you're interested in that. Not for COVID related, but for if you want to try to make one for other related things. All right. And just to say, we do have other virtual classrooms embedded into our lessons on sleep hygiene and summer safety and on nutrition and healthy eating habits. Thank you. All right. So we really wanted to give you all some time to explore those and get familiar with them. So I hope that was enjoyable. Next, let's continue to look at some more of the resources. And again, it's just going to be a few of them as we only have about a half hour left of our time together. And we have a few other things that we want to do. So for the first set of instructions, we are going to be talking about protecting ourselves and others, specifically around hand washing. One thing that I wanted to be able to share in advance that you'll see throughout the PowerPoint is a note catcher. So would Megra or Maggie please share the note catcher now? In the chat. Great, thanks so much, Megra. So everyone should be able to access a note catcher in the chat. This is a show you know note catcher. And what we're hoping you'll be able to do is after each of the sections that we're going to look at, you can stop with your students and they can think about the activity, draw a picture to represent it, and then think through what are their goals. So one thing that we've learned from this morning is that everyone's at different places with learning how to wash hands properly. So you might have to revisit that lesson a number of times before they understand that skill. And then this column 4, we think it's very important to be able to share those skills and that knowledge and information with a support person at home. So we wanted to give you a preview of what that would look like. Thank you. So next slide, please. So in the PowerPoint presentation, you'll find a video on why do you think hand washing works? And so we're going to give you all a chance to look at the video together right now. I think we need to double click on the sound. No sound. Excellent, thank you so much. So how about we use, and I understand Chromebook, you might not have the reactions, but can you give me a thumbs up if you knew all this information already, or a thumb sideways if you learned something new? I see some thumbs up. I see some thumbs up, that's great. That's great. So hopefully there'll be some new information for your students to learn in here as well about why does hand washing work and why do we need to practice it. We understand that all of these new protocols might take time to get used to in your school community. And so we want to thank you in advance for your patience. Okay. So next slide, please. So hand washing, and this is something that we had included in our take-home activities in the spring as well. This is a small science experiment that you could either do as a full class or you could do with students at home. The materials are fairly simple, so we thought that that could be something fun to be able to engage in and also connect with some of our science standards. Next slide, please.
All right, I think Susie might be a little frozen right now, so I can definitely just jump in here. So for the next, we're continuing on within our lessons regarding some hand washing materials here. So depending on your building, you may find students using hand sanitizer, or often they are using soap and water. A guide to hand washing and sanitizing is listed on this slide here. And you can reassure students that hand sanitizer will be available through the day in key locations. It is important that students follow the same guidelines for effective hand washing when sanitizing, both requiring 20 seconds to be effective and both requiring continuous rubbing and scrubbing of specific areas on both sides of the hands. And hand washing guide will be included in the materials and is featured in the virtual classrooms that you all explored earlier.
So
and here's some other.
Oh, sorry, Felicia.
Yeah, go for it.
I can jump in for the next slide. So if we go back just please for one moment, you'll see when do hands need to be washed or sanitized? And on the next slide, we can move forward to that slide, you'll find 3 sinks: before, after, and before and after. And what you can do along with your students is you can click on to any one of those icons. You can drop and drag the bus. You can drop and drag the mask. You can drop and drag a student eating into the correct sink, and discuss with your students as you go along when they should be washing their hands. Next slide, please. So here's the note catcher again. It's repeated throughout the lesson to give students a chance to pause, to make connections to the new learning, and to create a personal plan for implementing these new protocols. We've chosen to repeat this slide continuously throughout the lesson, and it will appear again and again in the student-facing PowerPoint for you. Please feel free to adapt the sequencing as you see fit. For example, you may decide to include this note catcher at the beginning and end of your lesson, or just at the end. The choice is yours, and you can adapt it as you see fit for your students. Let's move on to mask wearing. Proper mask wearing is an essential safety measure during COVID-19 and will most likely be helpful in containing the seasonal flu this year as a bonus. Next slide, please. So we have, to review, you can review with students, how do you wear your mask? And we have noticed, there have been notings that people are not pulling the mask, totally covering their nose and their mouth. So it'll be really helpful for you to go over this with your young people. Thank you. Those images are for you to use to start a conversation with your students around the importance of proper mask wearing. We anticipate young people will have lots of questions about wearing their masks. Do I have to wear my mask on the bus? Should I wash my mask? What if I forget my mask? So on this slide, you can find some answers to commonly asked student questions. The next slide is a choice activity for you. So if you'd like to enhance the learning with your students, you can have them design a mask for Boston Public Schools. And it's not a real contest, but it's something that you could put into play in your classroom should you choose. Excellent. Can we move on to the next slide? And again, here's that good old show you know note catcher. Again, a chance for you to pause and to process with your young people, a chance for them to engage, whether they're visual learners, whether they would like to do some writing. There are multiple options there, and most important, for students to take the information they've learned at home, review it with their trusted adults, and then that information, again, can be explored in one of the 3 virtual classrooms to create a common language and a common understanding on expectations from the youngest learner to the great grandparents that we have out there in our community.
Hi, Cheryl. I'm back, I think.
All right, Susie, I'll pass the baton back on to you. Take it away.
I'm so glad we're able to demonstrate all of this real world, you know, how things might be happening in the real world. So thanks so much for jumping in, everybody. I appreciate it. So where we are now is we're on protecting ourselves and others, and we're on to physical distancing. And physical distancing might be the most challenging protocol for young students to follow, perhaps. The next few slides will review protocols for physical distancing while encouraging students to stay socially connected. We have included some safe physical distancing practices. And as you know, it's important to let your students know what they can do in your school community and what they might not be able to do in your school community this school year. Well, hopefully we'll get back to things eventually. But on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see a poster that we've designed to show what does 6 feet look like. So it could be 1 yoga mat, 2 shopping carts, 6 rulers, 8 basketballs, and it's always great to be able to try to maybe show those real materials in person to show students. Physical distancing means keeping a safe space, and it's going to be important at school in both indoor and outdoor spaces. And remember that your friends care about you even though they cannot be physically close to you right now in this moment. So this is part of our physical distancing component. And if you go to the next slide, I'd like to share the next piece. which is practicing the skill of how can I greet my friends and still practice physical distancing. So on the next slide, we want to show you some ideas. So at the top bar, you'll see things that maybe we used to love to share in our school community: high five, fist bumps, big hugs, that might not be acceptable right now during COVID-19. So what are some ways that you can greet each other, especially since we're going to be so excited to be back together in person in just a couple of weeks? So on the bottom, you have some ideas. And I'd like to know in the chat, do you have other ideas about how to greet students and how they can greet one another in a physically distanced way? If you could add those into the chat right now, that would be great. So what we have here, we have the peace sign, we have a virtual fist bump, we have a virtual hug, thumbs up, and a wave. Are there any others? Oh yeah, the Wakanda hug. Oh, yes, we saw that a few times. I care about you, an air high five. Dance to each other, elbow wave. These are great. There's also jazz hands. Some of you might know those. So we did get some questions about elbow bumping and toe taps. Cheryl, would you like to chime in there?
So we're just waiting again as information changes regarding elbow taps. We feel that elbow taps will bring young people too close and not stay within that 6 foot range. We also, as far as toe tapping is concerned, we don't know what other behaviors that will then lead to. So we're not promoting that in our posters. But again, you make the choices that are best for the students in front of you. Thanks, Susie.
Awesome, thank you. So we're hoping you'll have some fun with this and design something that will continue to foster that safe and supportive environment in your school community. All right, next slide. Next, on protecting self and others, we have drinking water. Okay, this is very important to stay hydrated at all times. And these are the things that we know to be true at this point in time. That for a water break, the water fountains will be turned off. Students are being asked to bring full reusable water bottles to school. There will still be water coolers that we know of with disposable cups available, but we're encouraging students to never share a water bottle or to share a disposable cup. And then there will be some mask protocols to go through in order to drink that water. And here is an example. Sanitizing, washing your hands for 20 seconds, which we didn't get to practice above because I dropped out, but for 20 seconds. And then you will remove the mask, drink some water, sanitize and wash again, put the mask back on again. So we understand that drinking water will be really important, and these are the protocols we have to impart for students at this point in time. Thank you. Protecting others, so feeling sick. And we know that you're going to be able to have, I believe, a 3-hour session with your school nurse this week to be able to go more in depth on some of these protocols and to ask some really critical questions. This is what we've designed for you to be able to impart to your students. So if you're feeling sick, please stay home and contact your nurse if you have any of these symptoms: coughing, chills or fever, difficulty breathing, body muscle and pain, loss of taste and smell, or a sore throat. We know that those could possibly be symptoms. So we're encouraging students to stay home. They'll have to do that health daily checker to check in on and see how they're feeling each and every day. Next, what happens if you feel sick at school? Well, please tell a teacher, a school staff member, and then you'll be asked to go to the medical waiting area. A student would be asked to go to the medical waiting area where the nurse will assess their symptoms and determine what to do from there. I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions from your students about that. And we are sharing the information that we know as we have it. So if any modifications need to happen, we'll make them to the master PowerPoint so that you'll receive that as well. Finally, we have some very creative team members on our team. As you've seen, Maggie helped put together all the virtual classrooms. Felicia came up with this inspiring idea to help students review and engage in these new health and safety protocols. So this is a new, fun, and engaging game. On the board, students are able to move their game pieces back and forth as they answer key questions about the new COVID protocols. The blue card with the question mark in the center is actually a digital card deck, which has a whole bunch of questions in it that you can go through. My recommendation to you would be to play around with this before on your own, before sharing it with students, and to have some fun with it as well. All right. So those are some of the resources that we have for you. We will be sending out the PowerPoints, and we will be adding in anything engaging or exciting that we come across in the next couple of days or weeks to come. So thank you so much.
All right, so what we're going to do now is move into some scenario discussions. We know that your students will have so many questions, so we've put together a couple of scenarios and students to help you process the information that we've just shared. So in a moment, Felicia will be putting us into breakout sessions. In your group, I'd like you to discuss these scenarios. You may have time to discuss all four, or you may have so many ideas for one session that it keeps you, that you keep talking about that for your whole time together. So again, when you move into the breakout sessions, which we'll do shortly, please take a moment first to introduce yourself to your colleagues, share the school and the grade that you teach, and then you can take a look at the students. Just as an overview, here's student number 1. Student number 1 says, "Why do I have to wear my mask all day? This is so silly. I can't even breathe in this thing. I don't have COVID." So we're going to ask you to create responses to that student. Student number 2. While in class, student number 2, who has a history of asthma coughs. Somebody in the classroom begins to chant, "Student 2 has the Rona." The rest of the class laughs and begins to chime in. So this is another scenario that you can discuss with your colleagues. Let's meet student number 3. While in class, student 3 approaches you and says the following, "Teacher, I'm not feeling 100% right now. I'm feeling really cold and my head is pounding." In your group, you'll take a look and make a response for that student. And finally, student 4 comes to you and says, "Teacher, this whole situation, well, it's making me nervous. I thought I could handle coming to school at all, but I don't know anymore. I keep thinking about what if I catch COVID and what would it do to my family? We've already lost someone." Right? So the reason why I reviewed those is just in case you have technical issues accessing the slides once you get together. So Felicia is going to do a great job and put you into rooms. We'll have about 5 minutes. We have about 12 minutes left total of our time together. So Felicia, could you do that for us now, please?
Yes, of course. I just sent the scenarios in the chat. Please use the second link, as I apologize for the first, and also Maggie just sent it out. Once you get into your group, feel free to choose whatever scenario you'd like to do. And if you have time, do them all. And there will be 3 to 4 people within your group. Have fun, everyone. See you soon.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, when I went to the breakout room, I see it doesn't look like the regular normal look for the breakout room. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. So it didn't look like the normal breakout room?
No, I mean, can you try putting me in it again, maybe?
Yeah, let's try to give that a go. Do you remember what room you were in?
No.
Okay, I think I'm gonna try this one more time. I'm gonna try to move you somewhere. Let's see. Okay, room 26 is gonna have a surprise. Okay. Okay, I think you should be able to click into the new room. Okay.
So usually there's something that comes up that says join breakout room, right? Let me just,
Yeah,
let me
I
just,
just pressed the button to move you. So
okay, all right, I'm gonna try.
sorry, let me just mute this. It is being recorded.
I'm admitting Sydney, just so you know, so I don't know if she'll need a room.
We're all still trickling in.
All right, excellent. I know folks are still rejoining, and I welcome everybody back to our last 5 minutes together. Ideally, it would have been great if we could share out from the breakouts, but given the time that we have left, I think we'll start to launch into our optimistic close. Again, just as a friendly reminder, we will stay on the line with you and answer any questions you may have. As we complete our time today, I just ask folks if they could just kindly please check their audio and make sure that's on mute for our last few minutes together. Wonderful. So again, we're going to end today with an optimistic close. Before we actually get into that activity, I'd like to share one of my favorite illustrations and take this time to acknowledge the intense learning that you've been asked to do to support students in this unprecedented year. And I know how busy you've been for the last 2 weeks and well before that, and will be throughout the fall. So on behalf of the Health and Wellness Office, a sincere thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate your talents and your dedication to students. You definitely make a difference every day with every student, and we're so appreciative. To wrap up our time together, we invite you to choose one of the images on this slide and answer the question associated with that image by using the chat feature. So number 1, we have a head or a brain. After participating in this learning, what is one new thing you're thinking? Tell us what's on your mind. Number 2, the heart. What is one thing you're feeling? And finally, number 3, after participating today, what is one thing you are excited to do next or to implement? So let's take a minute to just review the options: the head, the heart, the feet. Again, this is a closing ritual that you can bring into your classroom and do with your students. And we have other optimistic closes that we are happy to share with you. Please remember that the whole health education team is here to support not only this lesson, but any other lessons you may choose to implement in your classroom. We have a complete health education resource library with grade band folders, full PowerPoints, and materials just like what we've shown you today for you to share with your students. And finally, to bring our session to a close, I'd like to remind you to be sure to complete the exit ticket so that you can get credit for being with us today. You'll notice the last 2 slides, one of the additional resources. And then finally, oh, where's the thank you slide? Oh, there we go. A big thank you to all of you who took time from your day and spent it with us live. We've had a whole lot of fun, and we appreciate getting to know you, and we look forward to supporting you throughout the year. So with that, I'll bid you goodbye. And again, please feel free to stay on, and we will be here for another 15 minutes to answer any questions you have. Thank you so very much.
Are you going to send the exit ticket in the chat? Are you going to put that in?
It's been linked